Hi, my name is Cecilia Ortiz, and I'm a photographer, and I've been involved with Studio Channel Islands for over 25 years. I was introduced to it by both Pat Richards and Catherine Young, who was involved early on with Julia Catano and Pat. Catherine was a local interior designer, so she was involved in securing flooring and helping with the design of the original studios and the gallery spaces. And Pat and my family, we have a long history together, so she asked me if I would come out and do some photography support. So that's how I started. And then it kind of morphed into helping with the monthly, or I don't know if it was monthly or quarterly, newsletter. So I was doing all the photography for that. And I worked with Sylvia Torres, who did the layout. And I worked locally for a major catalog and retail company. And we used to do a lot of work with FedEx, with printing. So I approached the manager at FedEx and said, hey, I work for this, I'm helping this nonprofit organization, and we need things printed and we don't have any money. And so I got the guy to do all the printing for free.
Good for you.
Yeah, so that was pretty neat. And just, going different places and shooting different people. And it was really fun, helping with all the fundraising and events and all the photo albums. Mostly are all my photos. And 25 years later, I'm still here.
Yay.
Yeah, it's an amazing group of people.
Catano, and when I first started, I was I think there were about 5 of us, and so we were the ones trying to keep away from the ghosts, because there were a couple that showed up. I remember one day I went in and Roxy was so happy to see me, because we weren't all there at the same time very often. But people were so nice. We had a good time, a lot of fun. My husband, Andrew, he put all the lighting in the main room, in the front for where you came in. For the gallery, that helped up a lot. So people like that, lots of people, like Julie Chase, redid all the flooring inside and out.
Hello, I'm Kathy Wagner, and I'm an artist here at Studio Channel Islands. And I was with the organization early on. I'm a ceramic artist and I'm a sculptor. And I had just gotten out of grad school and I was looking for a studio. And Tom McMillan happened to be the chair of my grad committee. And he said, he's retiring, and he asked me if I'd like to join them at the studio, which I was thrilled. So it was great that I had a place to land. Well, I feel blessed, because they're all wonderful, and we've all worked together, and so there's a lot to be appreciative of. And Tom and I collaborated on a number of things. I've shared a studio with probably 10 different people. Never any issues. We always got along, contributed, and just, you inspire one another. If you're in a studio all by yourself, you may get a lot of work done, but for me, I like being in space with someone else. It just adds to the experience. It's been a wonderful 25 years.
Hi, I'm Alana Condell. I actually I heard about Studio Channel Islands first through my parents. I was living in San Francisco, but I had grown up in Newbury Park. And they told me about this thriving art center on the campus of the old hospital, which I found dubious at the time, but San Francisco was getting a little dubious as well for me at the time. So I actually, I moved down and I put in my application and I found this like incredibly warm environment, really inspiring. It was all in one, well, mostly the painting studios were all in one room and they were connected with the largest gallery space in Ventura County. So it was beautiful. So I came in late 2004 and I think maybe I moved into the actual studio sometime in early 2005. So it was extremely critical to have a space of my own. But what also happened through being a part of the studio was not only did my work really grow, I was always one of the latest to leave. So one of the things I was able to do as part of that space is I became a little bit more active in, I was able to organize an exhibit of the artists in residence, and one of the things that I experimented with was the evolving painting project, where I would come in at night and I would paint. So it started out as a blank canvas and then it would evolve through the month. So that was something that I always sort of wanted to do, but you don't usually get access to a gallery that way. What's interesting is also my Santa Barbara gallerist found me by walking through the studios. And another thing that really changed my practice was the Art and Jazz Festival was happening, and I had a really dear friend who was a world and Moroccan musician, and we collaborated and set up shop, and I painted live to his music. So it's been a really important space for me to be able to try out different projects and evolve and gain feedback. And I would say, like, in those early days, our incredible gallery director, Michelle, was foundational as far as that. Often it was just the two of us remaining towards the later part of the day, and I was able to get her professional feedback, and she was a mentor and a dear friend and a really, really important part of how this art center has developed in terms of expansive programming as well. I also was able to be assistant curator with Gerd Koch when he did the 10th anniversary show. Yeah, so I mean but developed a lot of friendships over the years, and occasionally being able to ask for feedback and create things together. Co-creating our first mystery masterpiece with Carol Henry and Rich Breimer, who were a really important part of the Art Center along the way. So there have been so many people who have come through here, and then so many people who've been touched by the Art Center, like all the kids. So I've also been able to teach all different kinds of, like all different ages. These things are rippling out into the world, and it's really powerful and exciting. It has grown a lot, and I'm very excited about what I see as our visionary leadership that's helping us expand. I think there are so many volunteers that have made this all possible and that work behind the scenes all the time. And the fact that we're here today and thriving is very much a result of that volunteering. And in the early days, it was really all of the artists. I mean, it was, there were a number of people from the business community as well, but what I witnessed in those early days was the board was all artists, and what I've come to see today is that it's artists helping artists as well as community members. But I think that's really inspiring, and I'd like that to be part of how I conduct things. There's just a lot of room for involvement and building community here, and I'm just super grateful, and lots of friends. Thank you.
Yay, thank you so much.
Well, my name's Tom McMillan, and I'm retired faculty emeritus from Cal State University Northridge. And as soon as I retired, I got involved with developing an art program over at the University of Channel Islands. And that's what I've been doing those beginning years, and then eventually it moved over here, and I moved my studio to Ventura, but that's about it.
Thank you.
My name's Arlene Mead, and I've been an artist at Studio Channel Islands since November of 1999. And I moved in with Carlene Lavander Pratt, and we had like a tiny little studio space, and I was just happy to have like a table and a chair and a place to work away from home. And I found out about it somehow, and I don't really remember how, but somebody gave me a little scrap of paper that said Roxy Ray with a phone number. And I had been looking for a studio space. I called this number, talked to her. She said, "Oh, come out. You can, put in an application." Did that, and was able to move in a few months later. So, and when we moved in, it was very empty, just a
big
handful of
empty
people.
space.
Yeah, Gerd, Pat, Roxy, a couple other people, maybe 3 or 4 other people. And it was a big empty space, and tape marks on the floor for this is what you get to rent. And slowly over time expanded our studio space. I've had a shared studio with many different people over time, and I'm happy to be here now. It's been really interesting because sometimes over time you realize that something that somebody was doing over there made you think of something that you did over here, in not directly, but over time you would start to realize that. And that was really fun, actually, to see how we affect each other. And sharing a space currently with people who have a lot of great color sense and materials is always inspiring to me.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I love having a space that I can come to, that it's like going to work, but happy work, and where I can leave things where they are, and I don't have to like worry about clearing off the dining table or whatever the other problems are when you're trying to work from home. So it's been huge, and I always tell people this is my happy place to come.
Me too.
Ready? Yeah. I'm Jerry Johnson McMillan. I dropped the Johnson, so I go by Jerry McMillan now. But I came here, back in 97, beginning of 98, when they were first starting. And it was funny because at the time my husband and I both worked at Cal State Northridge, and in the art department. And I thought, and they were just starting to open this university up, and hopefully it'll be a university. And I thought, this would be great if we could transfer out over here, and it's right near our house. It's, we don't have to drive the hour away. Well, that didn't happen. They did turn it into a university, but what the university did was gave us a building to open up an art area, just to see what just to see how people liked having the arts, and
It would draw the community
draw the
in.
community. Yeah, Ventura and they're sleepy little towns, So anyway, it was really fun to come in on the ground floor, and I got a studio. I work in fiber arts, and that I weave, I spin, I do crochet, I do all fiber arts, dyeing and so forth. And anyway, so I got a room, and my goal at the time was to hopefully, in about a year or two, open up one of the classrooms as a fiber art studio, where I would bring students in, and we would have looms, and they could, work on the looms and so forth. And that almost happened. It was a few years later. Took a few years, but anyway, it did happen, and it really turned out well. And anyway, so it was great, the good old days. There was a group of us, and we just had so much fun, you know. Not many people around, a lot of flies, but not many people, and so we could, you know, be at my loom or do what we're doing and not be really interrupted and so forth. And everybody was talking about, well, you know, this building is haunted. And it came out to where we think it was really haunted. So we have a lot of stories about the haunts. Anyway, so we turned out that we just got bigger and bigger. More artists applied to get a studio, and
How many artists were there?
at that time I think there were 40 of us.
So that's pretty much what we have
pretty
here
much.
now.
Yeah, right. And we, when we moved over here, some people left and new people came in and stuff. But, you know, it was time for us. We knew we were not going to be on the campus, you know, much longer. And so it just so happened that, you know, this opened up. It's perfect. It's just perfect. Yeah, we just had a really fun time. There was this little, you know, community. Yeah, we were really a community, and help. I mean, you know, we were the only one. We had to do everything. So, yeah, I miss it. I miss sometimes, you know, at home I think, oh, I wish I was, you know, back with the girls and the people, the artists. But, you know, time moves on. You get older. Can't do a lot of those
But
things.
you still do your art.
I still do my art.
That's
yes.
great.
Oh, definitely. I think we made like lifelong friends, you know.
Nice.
It was for me, it was a beautiful time in my life. Time that I really needed, you know. It was just wonderful. Wonderful.
My name is Gerald Swerz. I'm a member of the Studio Channel Islands currently and was there in the very beginning helping start it. I have been an artist my whole life and I was part of the Studio 83 group prior to this organization, and when they were starting out at the university, I was asked to help with a number of the different parts of it, fundraising, organizing, putting on shows and exhibitions. At the time that the Studio Channel Islands was forming out at the university, I didn't take a studio there at the time. I helped with fundraising and putting on shows or different events. But I thought it was an incredible concept. I just loved the idea of it. I loved the formation of what would become the art department for the university, and just this huge open space with all these different artists kind of cross-pollinating. Basically, Studio Channel Islands came into what was a large building that had been part of the Camarillo State Hospital at the time. And so the building was so solidly constructed that there was no, it would have been major demolition to move walls or things in it. So picture like a big wide open warehouse space with people putting up divisions inside it. Just some of them might just have a set of tables that defined their space, or some just, you know, put up curtains, or some were very open, some were very enclosed. And there were a couple of people who, as I recall, I think kept the space just as an exhibit space. They didn't really produce their product there as much as just loved being part of this dynamic kind of place. And it's like the brewery in Los Angeles or Bergamot Station, where it's like a repurposed kind of a place. And it was really fun to see how people used it and then what they would produce. It was that way for a number of years. And as the university grew, they kind of pulled it back into utilizing it as the seed for creating an art department for the university. And in the early days, there was a lot of interaction with other groups. One of the events that I was involved in, there was the art studios, as well as in the gallery there, as well as the Channel Islands Ballet Company and the New West Symphony, and had like this beautiful outdoor dinner, which was a fundraising thing with different each organization kind of showcasing what they did, and it was just a beautiful, very energetic, very fun beginning, and nice to be part of. And then in the interim, I would do different things with the organization, help out with different activities or events that they were doing, but I didn't take a space with it until the current director came on board, and he and I were working together on a community project for one of the local hospitals. And I thought, dang, I mean, I'd been aware of how the organization was developing, and when he came on board, I just thought, okay, I think I'll get involved again. I thought, so there's between 40 and 50 artists who have studios here on campus, and it's so fun because I'm involved in other organizations that have a different set of standards. This has a very high level of quality. They have a screening committee, and part of the purpose of the screening committee is not just to make sure that you're a good enough artist to be present, but to make sure that there's a variety, and that if that we don't end up with everybody producing the same kind of things. We think that the future of it is just phenomenal. I'm so thrilled and excited to see what that little seed planted a number of years ago
25.
became the oak tree that it is today, and it's so fun and exciting. This is definitely just the most dynamic organization, just has the funnest events, great concerts.
Yeah, that's great.
So,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank
Okay.
you.
My name is Pat Richards Stotts, and when Studio Channel Islands started, I was Pat Richards. I was working in the banking area. I became acquainted with Handel Evans, who was the planning president of the soon-to-be Cal State Channel Islands. And he invited me to be part of the first foundation board there, which was just a huge honor to be with Linda Dullum and other people there that I met through that. And one day he said, Pat, I know you're an artist and you've been out there in the art world for a long time. He said, I want to encourage the development of an art department at Cal State Channel Islands, and in this day and age they don't really do that. They just go for the basics. So there is an old art therapy unit building down there that might work if you could bring some artist friends in there. And so he took me down there on a tour. But I had been part of a group called Studio 83, which was a very prominent art group in Ventura, started by Hiroko Yashimoto and Susan Petty. And I was fortunate enough to be invited into that group, and I had my studio there. But they lost their lease, and they looked for places and couldn't find anything, and so the organization just kind of dwindled and went away. So the day I walked in there, I said, this is it. I found the place where we could start all over. So there were maybe 2 or 3 of us that's the way he worked. He got us just jazzed on it, and then we all came together, and that's how we formed Studio Channel Islands. And it's called Studio Channel Islands, taking from Studio 83, and we were on the campus of Channel Islands, so that made perfect sense. So we started with nothing. We had just a big old dirty space, and within a few months the university was going to have its first informal opening. So there were just about 7 of us. I was not the greatest artist there, but I was the catalyst for bringing people together, and I had such a vision that it was a passion with me. I was just obsessed with making this thing work. And it continues to go, yeah. Within just 2 or 3 years, we had already built a reputation for being
An art center.
a major art venue beyond just a place for day painters. And we kept with those rules that you had to be juried in, you had to be a serious professional artist to be there. Having that place gave me the focus to really get back into it. But more than that, walking around watching these fabulous artists, and
It was inspiring.
it was inspiring, and you learned so much from their discipline and their ideas, and we were all such good friends because we were all in the same building. It was just really, truly one of those art organizations where we all pulled together. Totally changed the focus of my life. And when we moved, we thought it was the end of the world, and I actually did find that place across the way. I knew the man that owned it.
So that it could be a gallery.
It was just a
But
gallery.
it was not a working space.
No working space. It was quite small. And it just seemed like we had the same fate coming as Studio 83.
The end was
But-
nigh.
Yeah, but we had wonderful Maggie Kildee, and she had been a teacher and also the county supervisor, and she got word that they were going to be vacating this site of the old Pleasant Valley School, and she made all of that happen. So
So we went from an elementary school to an art center.
and yeah, that's our fate. But the wonderful thing is you walk from what used to be classroom to classroom, and now they're studio to studio, and they're all totally different.
A lot of
These
diversity.
creative people have just transformed this into a fabulous art center.
It's a pleasure to be here.
It is a pleasure to be here.
And Studio 83 had like an ethos of collaboration and sharing and ambition.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard a rumour that Studio Channel Islands, when it initiated, were like, well, if Studio 83 can do that, then we should be doing that. That's how we should behave.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
Does that make sense to you?
Yes. Pat Richards, she was a member of Studio 83. Studio 83 started in 1983, so that's why we call it. And actually, we started from my students. I was teaching at that time, did not want the classes to end. They enjoyed so much. So they got together as a group, like there are at least 15 out of 20 some student in class, and they wanted to continue working together as a group. So some of them went looking for a place to, say, rent or lease. And we have done that, all the warehouse area in Ventura. And then we moved up to another place, and we stayed longest at the old church place across from Ventura College. And so we actually split the rent with a number of resident students, and then that's the base to to finance our rent. But anyway, we worked together, and not only the textile area, but the painters, ceramists, jewelry makers, sculptors, those people also start joining. And one of the successful part of the group is that twice a year we cleaned up the whole area, and we repainted, and we opened for sale and show, and that was very successful. So people start to notice, and people start to wait for the such a showing and so on. So we became very successful for as long as we could afford the place. And then the landlord increased the rent and so on. So we started to look for other places, and it was difficult. So we all together survived for 16 years, and out of that there are many students joined from the college, and then the other people from the city all joined. Pat Richards was one of the students, and Gert Koch and other people start to talk about, let's have our own organization like Studio 83. So that's, I think, how they started. And at the beginning, I joined their discussion with these people who are interested to start a bigger organization. So I think SCIart is a much more sophisticated idea, because you had a way to continue finance with open membership, just the resident members, and much bigger space and so on. So I'm so happy that our Studio 83 has some kind of influence in starting of the SCIart, and you guys are really thriving and doing wonderful, really high-class things. So it's just wonderful to see it's surviving so long, so well, and still very healthy.
That's something that Studio Channel Islands does really well, is make opportunities for great artists to share a space, and for the community to come into that space.
Yes.
And to see all this wonderful work.
Yes.
So through these conversations, there is a dialogue about the practical side of how the space was made. How Handel was able to open up a space, and how Roxy was able to envisage how that space could be used. But I think the piece of it that's more intangible is that group of artists who grasp that opportunity.
Yes, and then the mixture of all kinds of artists of all mediums, and no, it's not just the painters, but three-dimensional people and printers and all this fiber arts people, the mixture, they really stimulate our creativity, and I think it's really wonderful. I mean, artist groups are really wonderful, we really like each other. In my experience in Studio 83, we had wonderful time together, and physical work and cleaning up and making the space and workable with other people. Those are really great community.
I think it's fascinating to me that the university evolved over here as like a formal degree-giving entity. And then adjacent to it, within the same space, was this community-driven exploration of creativity. And it's really rare to have that breadth of art forms.
Yes.
So I think there's something very special that occurred at that point.
Yeah.
And so I think Studio 83 really has a very important role in evidencing a way of working
Mm-hmm.
and the importance of collaboration.
Yes, yes, we sure enjoyed, encouraging each other. We actually really helped each other in many ways. SCIart, from the beginning, even physical work and making that whole campus into the art gallery, beautiful art gallery, and then inviting Michelle Dupuis, the real professional known figure in LA, and she was amazing, made, I think, at the SCIart to a really high level. And I was lucky. I think I was one of the very first solo shows she curated. And that was at the Channel Island, the university campus. And it was, to see her work was really great, and we really collaborated well. And in addition to that, I had the back galleries. There are 50 of my students who became artists, and they all had a group show. And that was really wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Conceptually, artists having access to this space is understood to be happening, but there's a practical kind of hard work that needs to get done in terms of actually making it a reality for artists to work in that space. So you released that capacity by giving the keys to Linda?
Well, yes and no. It was easy for me to do that, of course, to get it going, because I didn't do any of the work. And everybody else did. I was doing something else. But it was the story of the time at the university when everything was in sort of flux. I think that one of the interesting things about it is that people spent a little time listening to what we were talking about, and then we just went on, and we sort of pulled out. That means Carol and I pulled out, and people just picked it up and went on with it. And of course, they were very, very involved at that time as a sort of underground artist movement. And when the word got out, then it became a very, very interesting thing to do.
So the attention of the community was on this growing university,
Mm-hmm.
but you're saying that the hearts of a lot of people were on this creative space.
Yeah, I think the university was it's obviously important to many, many people, and it was obviously it's a very important thing. But I think the studio became almost personalised to people that took a part in it, which in a way was what we were looking for, because the history of it is that I realised sometime in the preparation for the university and in the implementation of the university master plan that the fine arts and performing arts would not be a major part of the university. Everybody was in love with Amgen and Baxter and all those other wonderful scientific places, and I think rightly so. But it occurred to me that you can't have a university really without at least some kind of art, whatever it might be, just like you can't do it without English literature, maybe. Some people would argue with that, but that's my feeling. And so once we started the ball rolling, it became a natural thing for us being the studio, to sort of spread out and say, you know, Charlie, I know that you're a sculptor, but I have this great idea for you. Would you be interested? Yes, of course. Yes, of course. So what we thought might be a series of small little studios in which university students would walk through and get involved in talking to people, and then from there sort of pick it up, regardless of how they were thinking, but do something in it. That's the way we would do it. And over time, I was very confident that that would become the issue. Now, I wasn't ready for what happened because the master plan was written. And of course I left and retired. And suddenly we had 260 majors in the art department because it was a general ed course. Now, if you have 260 students, this is full-time equivalent, so there are a lot more than that, something's going to happen. And what happened was that art, creative art, became a part of the curriculum and became a general education topic. So it sort of ran ahead of us of what we were thinking. But the die was cast. This organisation was in, and regardless of what the university did then, which was sort of interesting, regardless of what the university did, we did something else. And we were sort of in contact, but separate. And I think, Peter, that in a way that was good, because it allowed the professionals to be professionals and not teachers and not have other distractions. They came later and were self-inflicted. But I think that the university did what universities do. You know, there were 30 people in a studio, and they had a big studio, and they all had boards, and they all painted and did what they were asked to do. Nobody asked anybody in the studio what to do. It would have been hell to pay if somebody had done that. So it was a very nice counterbalance to the regular way in which things happened on the university campus, and over here, a completely different way of doing it. And were they part of the university? Yes, they were. Yes, they were. They didn't walk around with titles and all that good stuff, and nobody was worried about tenure. But over here, they were practicing artists connected to a university, and that was important at that particular time in life.
From a standpoint of a newcomer to the community, a small, what I've considered an agricultural town, right? There was, for me, the memory that the phenomenal amount of energy, lack of who's better than who, or who's selling more than somebody else. We've had a community of artists that came together with amazing contacts that reached far beyond our area. And when they reached out, amazing, again, here we are, this little tiny town, right? They responded, and we had some top support from national, if not beyond, recognized artists who supported and became a part of the reality that this was not just kind of people playing at their game of art. These were seriously backed, very, very grounded people. And they came without asking for anything. Everybody just wanted to see this place succeed. And it has been phenomenal. I truly believe that it has been an enormous outpouring of people who help one another, support one another. It always came about, and I think we'll always be grateful, really, really grateful. The university has emerged as a major player in our area, but the Art Center has brought a whole different crowd of support, which I think has been vital. It's been really vital to our success.
I think that's true. And I think that it still has great potential. One of the aspects of it that nobody talks about anymore was that for a brief period of time we were sponsoring a ballet class. And how did we get there? We got there through Cindy Smith. And Cindy gave us the money to take another space that we had there. That was the wonderful thing about being in charge of that place at the time. We had more room than we knew what to do with, and nobody telling us how to do it, which normally is the case. You know, you have so many square feet for science, and etc., etc. Unfortunately, that didn't work. But if you're ever interested in doing that, if you go into the second big dining room, under the floor there's a $250,000 ballet floor that you might be interested in seeing. Or at least there was when I left, let's put it that way.
Well, they didn't tear it out, hopefully. Yeah.
No, and out of that also grew the Ted Lucas's music group,
The choral.
the choral
Yes.
society that's still extant,
Yeah.
and now, interesting enough, it's gone completely around, and we have concerts in our gallery, which I think is terrific.
And poetry
And now
readings.
poetry reading,
Poetry reading.
which was, sort of never thought of at that time. Just reports on what we really needed to do if we were to go to get a comprehensive arts.
Building a university is a huge endeavour, too complicated for anybody to really understand,
Right.
apart from yourself. Everybody else.
No,
would be-
I was probably the guy at the end of the line, but anyway.
But doing an art project, building some studios, having a recital, these are things that are kind of you can get your arms around, and I think people can understand how to do that, and then just be curious to see, well, what unfolds out of that? Where does that go? And I think that seems like that's the story you're telling, is that this university was being built brick by brick, carefully by bureaucrats with contractors.
Precisely.
And then over here we had a whole community of people that were just reveling in the freedom to make, explore, play, and share.
Some people, most I should say, of the artists that came didn't have anywhere to work. They worked out of a spare bedroom or the garage or whatever. And so this was, in a way, a very, very productive method of putting them to work and helping them do their own work. And one of the interesting things about it, Peter, was that we had a couple of exhibitions that were really, really quality exhibitions, I thought, and I was told that they were. And Gerd Koch and some of the other outstanding artists in the community were behind that. For example, we had an exhibition of the new tapestries for the Los Angeles Cathedral, and we had Gerd there to explain it to us, and the designer. So we had a lot of that. But one of the important, well, it wasn't important, but it was very amusing. We had a sort of retrospective, even then, of artists' work. And I remember one of them coming up to me and saying, "You know, Handel, I actually sold something." And I said, "You're supposed to." I've never been in that situation before. And so that helped, and I'm sure you understand that, coming from an artist.
Well, way back, I liked the story better about the trees. Then they got me really involved in the studio was when my friend Kathy Swar and I went out to clean out the old art studio. And it was overgrown and dry and was hardly anything green there except way up high. And so I got my wonderful little gardener, Roberto, and Roberto and I climbed the trees, ladder on the bottom, and climbed the trees and sawed off. We took 2/3 of the tree away, so we got all the sunshine down in that little garden. And Roxy was down there cheering and cheering. And then pretty soon I got this message sent down, and I can't remember who gave it, but sent down by Handel saying, tell her to get the hell out of the trees. Tell her we're not going to be responsible. Tell her, and we stayed in the trees and we finished the job. Roberto and I trimmed all those trees. And then all the shrubbery that was growing right down to the ground, we crawled in underneath and we trimmed everything off. And we worked for about 3 weeks getting that garden. So that was my most earliest, really. But John and I were having dinner one night with Carol and Handel. And Handel said, what am I going to do with all this art space, these cages that were built for the patients, and how are you going to handle this? Oh, God, Handel, I don't know. Golly. And who should come in the door but Roxy Ray. Roxy Ray Bordelon then. And she immediately figured it out that it would be, but we couldn't do it right off because in order to have an art department, you have to have too many, the ratio between student and instructors is really different. You have to hire a lot more instructors than we had in the budget. But at any rate, it was, she sat down and thought it over, and really by the time we were finished with dinner, Roxy had it all figured out, and she even figured out how to drop the legalese and everything for us to have have the property and have the okay to be on the property and all that. So within a week, Roxy had hired an attorney, gotten all that done. I mean, she really was wonderful. She was really the go-getter, the starting of it all, of Studio Channel Islands.
So the trees that have just arrived.
Oh, this is so exciting. We have 4 new multi-trunked, non-fruiting olive trees, one for each corner of the Roxy Ray garden. So we're finally going to get it done. A whole lot of really great soil, and that we're going to plant around the edges, and then we're going to paint the bricks, and then we'll be ready to put in the DG and put in the platforms for all the sculptures. We are so excited. And the artists that are here today say, I saw trees. Does that mean anything? Does that mean we're almost there? Well, it means we're getting there. But it is really exciting.
Did you look at those trees and think they needed a trim?
No.
You're not planning on getting in there with the loppers?
Maybe it's a good idea to do it. Thanks, Peter. Maybe it's a good idea to do it before they grow. No, we want them to be big.
So this new garden, the Roxy Ray Sculpture Garden, it kind of comes full circle for your, what's happening right now has this deep connection to the beginnings of your relationship with it. So how does that feel?
Oh, it feels really good. It feels really good to see something. I think it's so vital over there. I love that place. And the artists are wonderful, and to just have that in our community is
started.
Yeah. So Pat Dodd's Starbucks.
She had a group of us at the at Starbucks talking about it, and eventually we went out to the university and looked at the space. And then Handel Evans, said, would the art community be interested? Well, I had been, I think I probably was retired by then, or at least about to retire. And Handel had met the man who was our CEO, Richard Wittenberg, when Richard went to San Jose to be their CEO. and Handel was there. And so Richard told him that he had to meet me when he came to the university here. So Handel invited us, would we be interested in this building? And I remember we got invited the artists that everybody knew. I didn't know any, except a few in local ones. And we had about 200 people show up at Studio Channel Islands. And I was just dumbfounded because I didn't know any of these people. I thought I knew everybody in the county because of having served on the board. Well, I only knew people in the west end of the county. So that's the beginning of it. And I'm sure that you've heard lots of stories about the beginning and who was involved and all of that. I didn't have a studio out at Studio Channel Islands. I had a beautiful studio at home, and I loved it. But when our lease ran out at CSU, we began looking, and finally I talked to the school district people, and we finally were able to get a wing at Pleasant Valley School. The rest of the building was full of Head Start students and preschool kids, and they were appalled at the artists that might have to share this building, and they put up like a 6 foot chain link fence and locked the back doors of the studio. And I finally moved my studio to Studio Channel Islands at that point. I think by then Bob had died, and so I found myself alone all the time. And it felt good to have a studio where there were other people around. I shared a studio with Kathy Wagner, who is such a good ceramicist. People would come in the studio, and mine was the first studio they would see closest to the door. And they would like my work. Oh, this is wonderful. And then they'd see Kathy's and they'd go, wow. And I decided maybe I should share a studio with somebody else. Eventually I moved to when we finally got the whole school, was kind of a challenge, but I think it was Head Start, but all the students were finally relocated to Dos Caminos School. I'm not sure, but I think that they're still there. And I hope I think it's been a good transition for them. It's been wonderful for us, as you know. Studio Channel Islands has just blossomed at the school, and it's become much more community oriented than we could be out at the university.
Yeah, people talk a lot about you getting the school for Studio Channel Islands and how you sort of landed that as a real estate deal.
It was a challenge, but the school board, they saw the need and they supported me to the parents who were not real happy. But that I was grateful that it worked out like that. First of all, you know, we had been in that little studio across the street, but it was great to move to the school and then finally to be able to have the whole studio, the whole school.
Do you feel like you were able to grow more as an artist being there, or?
Well, I think so. Just the fact that I was with other artists, being able to see their work, being challenged by being able to show my work, knowing that people would come in on the first Saturday and see my work, and that they would buy my work was like a validation that it was, that people liked it. People like Roxy were always good at critiquing my work too. If I would ask them about something, what do you think I should do about this? Why isn't this working? She was great. Well, for the organization itself, I think the fact that it's made such good inroads into the community is something that it needs to just continue to build, so that the community and the city council sees that as a absolutely vital part of the community, not just as a place for artists and not just as a place for the community to visit, but as a real economic contributor to the city of Camarillo. That they become an anchor of Old Town in terms of fundraising. It needs to be a big part of the studio. I'd love to see the city council and the county finding a way to support, financially support the studio because of what it can do for the city and the county in terms of just the whole economic value of bringing people into Old Town, using the restaurants, buying things at the stores. But it takes a concerted effort in the Chamber of Commerce and the City Council. They all need to be working at ways to make Old Town a more vital, I think it is a vital part, but it should be even more vital to the future of the city. I think the city needs to see it as more than a place for artists, even an education place for both students and adults, but it's more than that. It's an economic factor in the town. But where we've come, you think about this group of 25 or 30 artists in this dirty old building out at what used to be the state hospital, and you see what that group of people have put together. It's just astonishing when I read about what's going on at Studio right now. And I'm just amazed and proud of what was started by so many of us, not so many actually, back in the day. But it's kept going and kept growing, and it's kept reaching, and with more and more. Just the fact that the parents and then the kids, like Joyce and then Rachel, and your parents and you, just those things that make it very clear to me that it wasn't just a flash in the pan back then. It was solid, and it had solid foundation, and it can grow from that to wherever the members want to take it and wherever they find the resources to do that. The studio is reaching out to touch the lives of different kinds of people, meaning people that are involved in so many different ways. It's really something for me to see the changes that have happened over the years and where it can continue to go.
So you said that you started volunteering. Can you talk to us about what the tasks were that you were volunteering to do?
The first thing that I volunteered at was a collector's choice event. And it was over in the other gallery across Ventura Boulevard, in that small gallery that could hold maybe 50 people, probably 30 really, so people could breathe. And we had at least 100 people lined up outside, and so I volunteered to do a traffic control, to be a bouncer, if you will. So I just planted myself in front of the door and waited till Rich and Carol would say, okay, let in the next person, number 3, number 4, that type of a thing. And it was fun because, I wasn't just like holding people back, I was engaging with people. They were engaging with me. We were having conversations, we were laughing. We were talking about different experiences. We were talking about the artists in the studios and the arts and what else was going around in the region. It was eye-opening, number one. It was freeing, meeting all of these people and just becoming involved. It really felt good. So that was the first thing that I did for Studio Channel Islands. And then it just morphed from there, whatever Karen Geiger, the then executive director, if she needed something, I can move stuff, I can sweep, I can whatever. I remember when we got the building, it's not that it was in bad shape, it wasn't that it was in good shape, I should say, but it wasn't terrible. And so, there was a fair amount of manual labor to do, and again, whatever I could do, I could do. No one wanted to give me a paintbrush. With all of the artists, they wanted to take care of that, great, but again, moving stuff around, I helped build a couple of things, some podiums, platforms, but it was just grunt work is what I call it. And when it opened, it was nothing like it is today. Let me tell you, the gallery itself has morphed into an absolutely fabulous venue for talent. So when we really started to have exhibitions earnestly, they were monthly. So there was a lot of work that was always going on. I wasn't so much involved with those, but I was very involved with the other events that we held, the fundraising events. There was always stuff to do.
Talk about the importance for you coming here, not knowing anybody, and then having a cultural space to connect. How important is that for a community?
Great question. And for me personally, it maybe wasn't a lifesaver. Maybe that's stretching it a little. But after that first encounter, that barbecue, I had 30 new friends. I had a place to go on a consistent basis that provided value, intrinsic value. The ongoing events were not only fun, they were always somewhat educational in some aspect, and again, having a place to go to see people on a regular basis instead of sitting here is extremely valuable. It was for me, and it is for everyone else, in my mind. And that's why through the years, everyone that I meet, somehow SCIart gets into that conversation. You didn't know? You've only been to Camarillo twice? Come a third time, those types of things. Because, cultural events bring people together. And when people are brought together, they can have conversation. And we don't have to have the same opinions, especially when you're talking about art. You look at some of the stuff that I have here, I'm sure there are people that say, why is that hanging on your wall? And I say, because it called to me. It meant something to me. A conversation with the artist brought me closer to their realization, and that opens the mind. We've become too closed as a society, And I think cultural events help open that up, break through those aspects, and just open us up. And I think you can't put a value on that. You can't quantify that.
So you started experimenting with clay.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about when you went from just playing around idly during a artist talk to deciding that you wanted to actually dedicate some time to understanding that? What was that journey like?
The first thing I did was go to an eye paint, it was called, where people get together and there's a subject matter and you have a canvas and some paints, because I said, how hard could this be? Well, as I said, I'm color challenged and it's not that easy. With the clay, I felt much more comfortable. I'm a tactile person, and clay just felt better. So in going through the artist studios on an open Saturday, first Saturday as it is now, I talked to Judy Renard, who's one of the ceramic artists there, and Mary McGill, one of the others, and Mary's schedule when she taught and me couldn't get along, but Judy had a couple of night classes available, and so I decided to try. She said, just try. So I did. I remember walking in there and I got handed a lump of clay. Okay, make something. Well, what should I make? Well, I don't know. What do you want to make? Well, I don't know. What should I make? All of those things started happening. But, she was very good at hand-holding, hand building with clay, but hand-holding me through, well, why don't you make a pot, a pinch pot. This is how you do it, just try it. And so I made my first pinch pot, which had a hole in the bottom. That was not supposed to be there. And then I did it again, and then started making other shapes and listening to people, watching the other people in the class who had much more experience than me. They'd been in 3 classes instead of just 1, whatever. Some very talented students, some artists from the studios in the class as well. So that was extremely interesting, seeing a professional artist taking classes to do better with a different medium. So that was quite eye-opening in and of itself. And quite honestly, those first 8 weeks of the class, I didn't do much other than feel the clay, just get a feel for the clay, understand the properties of the clay from a tactile standpoint. That second class that I took, it was like therapy. All of a sudden it went from, oh my God, what do I do, to, oh my God, isn't this nice? And I would just, sit or stand, depending on what I was doing and what I was working with, and and creating. It wasn't like electronics, nothing like electronics. It was all feel, which just kind of blossomed. And I continued taking classes. I have a few things that I'm proud to show. I have a few things that I have displayed that I am really sorry that I have on the shelf. But it's just it's nice. It feels good. It is relaxing. It just always having a deadline at work, then going to class and not even thinking about it, not picking up the phone and looking at the 30 extra emails that I just got after, quote, working hours, because there was no working hours, it was all hours. It was great. It is great. And my goal is just to be with people, have fun, learn, feel good, and maybe create. You know, now I want to do more. You know, I want to experience more from a student standpoint into ceramics. I don't think I'll get back to painting, although I'm being told that I should use my color issues to my advantage. And again, not worry about it. The grass doesn't necessarily have to be green. If you want to make it blue, make it blue. I still have a problem with that. But that's, you know, that's a mental problem. I cannot tell you how I select what I select, because each piece calls to me. The Roxy Ray that is in frame, Roxy and I were very close, and I spent a lot of time in her studio, and she had a lot of pieces. And how I got this one was quite strange. She wanted to move stuff around in her studio, and she worked big. She had smaller pieces, of course, but she had some very large pieces, and they were hard to transport, and they were hard to find a place for. And so I said, well, Roxy, I've got this big wall. And so we brought it over and hung it, and it's been there ever since. And I'm very, very lucky to have that piece. I have 3 other pieces of Roxy's work, and they just call to me. Her art, her farm workers, field workers, don't just appear as a 2D image for me. They have life. I can see and feel the work, the pain, the sweat that they feel. I think she was extremely talented, and was a great loss to our art community. A piece just has to call to me, and that's how I choose it. Mm-hmm. It's like wine, $100 bottle or a $7 Trader Joe bottle. They both can be equally as good. I think that current staff, Peter and Jamie and the board, have been doing a really phenomenal, very positive number of things. I think, Peter, you've taken the organization and moved it up, not 1 level, not 2, but more than 3 levels. Is there more that can be done? Well, yes, the answer is there's always more that can be done. What would I like to see? Well, certainly the completion of the memorial garden for Roxy. COVID really messed up the art communities and art organizations in our region. And I would love to see more of a collaboration or coming together of all, at least some of the regional organizations that still exist. I think if we could in fact collaborate somehow and not compete, I think all of us would be better off.